Sorry about the break, guys. We're back, getting going. We both had to use the restroom. So,
I'd love to know. So again, this is just by incidence of my meeting you now. When you seem motivated and interested in things, and I wouldn't guess just by meeting you now that you had a crisis of values, right? Tell me about, in making this podcast, in speaking to people like me or whoever, what would be the ideal outcome for somebody listening to this? What is it that you wanted to spread? That I mean, I'm also wondering whether you wish you had something of this kind at certain moments in your life. But
definitely,
tell me about your motivations based on what you've gone through.
I mean, just to start with, like, you said you wouldn't think that in the past I was someone that lacked motivation, but that's such a crazy concept, because I always was doing something. I tried writing screenplays, tried writing plays, tried making films, tried making shorts, did acting, and I always had this feeling of ambition that there's something I want to do, but I never felt hopeful, I guess. At least when I went down that kind of bad path, it always felt like I'm faking it. Like this is bullshit. I have this ambition, but I'm not capable of actually like making something happen. Now I feel it's funny because it doesn't matter if something is going to happen or not. I'm not going to stop. Like, that's what I finally learned, is you got to go, you got to do it. If something, like our conversation right now, engaging conversations like this, like I was saying before we started, this is the most meaningful thing I feel in my life. When I get intimate, when I open myself up, when someone opens themselves, when we talk about deep stuff that's just it's engaging the human mind. It's, therapy, all this stuff. It's so engaging to me. So it doesn't even matter the outcome. I'm gonna keep doing it no matter what. But what I would like someone listening to this, I would really love for people to have that, I guess, that peer support. Like, I know it would have been nice to have a podcast or something to listen to of someone going through the struggle with me every day, and someone who has the awareness enough to speak about it and the vulnerability to speak about it. I'm not here to say I'm perfect. I'm not here to say I got my shit together. I'm not here to say I know the answers. I'm here to say I don't know anything, but I'm trying my best, and I'm going through this every single day. I'm here with you. I'm here with you. I'm your brother. I'm your uncle, whatever it is. Like, I'm here going through this with you, and I'm going to try to explore these ideas as much as I can to get advice from people like you. There's so much amazing stuff you said that I'm sure people are going to have that moment of like, wow, I never thought about it like that. And so that's what I want, is to be able to possibly provide a community for people struggling that, there are times where I was listening to Jordan Peterson or Goggins or Willink, and it just made me feel more pathetic. Because I'm like, I'm not there. They're these put together people, these badass guys working out, lifting every single day. Jordan Peterson is this intellectual, smart guy who's traveling the world, lecturing to thousands of people, and he's so articulate, and it made me feel small. Like, man, I'm not there.
What do you make of the all those guys share this kind of masculine fighting attitude?
They do.
Why does that appeal to you so much?
I guess it appeals to me. I don't know. That's such a good question. I actually almost joined the military. Like, I was not that long ago either. I was about ready to join. I went down, met a recruiter, super ready to go, join the Navy. And I don't know the answer to that. I guess the feeling of, sometimes I think I'm in this transitional period in my life where I'm like, I lived a lot of my life being like a pushover, not speaking my mind, not being aggressive, not exercising.
When was that?
Like the past 5-6 years, even before that, even in high school.
As an adult? Oh, okay.
Even in high school, I was bullied, not physically, but I felt bullied in high school. Well, belittled maybe is a better way to put it. I felt like I was belittled a lot, and I always felt inferior to other people. Definitely went through that as far back as I can remember, really. I always had that feeling of feeling inferior, not feeling smart enough, not feeling good enough. And I definitely think I'm finding the balance now. I feel that's a huge thing that I want to talk about too, is balance. Yin and yang. It's so important. Like the balance of, you can't be too aggressive, you know, but you can't be a pushover. And I think they appealed to me initially because it sparked that aggressive, you need to stop being a pushover. You need to start speaking your mind. You need to, you can do something with your life. If you work your ass off, you can actually make something happen. You can, you know, you don't need someone else's approval, support. You can make stuff happen, you know? And I think I went to the extreme when I first kind of started getting into this. I kind of pushed myself really hard and was rude. I was aggressive to the point where I was kind of being rude. It's like I was being egotistical on the other side of the spectrum.
But you were trying to do
I was trying
what
to,
they were more or less conveying?
Yeah, I was trying to. I was just like navigating through it in a very sloppy manner. And now I've kind of got to that point where I understand how important it is to have balance. I understand how important it is to have compassion. And like you, detaching or unattaching, not letting my ego get the better of me. Now I get it. Like that is the key. That's the key. Not let your ego get the better of you. Unattach, be balanced, be compassionate, you know, and the whole masculine aggressive drive, it's a hard, you know, I don't know. I think I agree with Jordan Peterson a little bit on the page that there's a lot of blowback happening. Like, and we talked about that discussion, that discussion about this class of guys, young, white, male, that feel like they're getting a lot of shit for stuff that they don't feel they even can identify with. I was kind of one of those guys. I never felt growing up privileged. I was not privileged at all. I grew up I grew up poor. Both of my parents were on drugs when I was a kid. I, you know, didn't have money, didn't have any advantages, you know, definitely just grew up average, you know, just the average guy living in a small town. I never felt privileged at all. And moving to LA, which is a pretty liberal city, I've encountered people that just judge me immediately right off the bat. Oh, you're white, you're young, privileged, you know, not even going to give me the time of day to talk about certain things or whatever the issue was. Maybe that's part of it too, you know, just that perhaps, they point that out. I think I look up to them as father figures for sure. They're definitely like mentor figures because I, you know, that lacked in my childhood for sure. Just the discipline, the responsibility, that kind of, my dad was a good dad. He was a loving dad and was there for me, but there's a lot of stuff, you know, a lot of issues and in and out of prison, the drug issues. My mom too, she's actually schizophrenic and bipolar. So there was a lot there, younger, with her not being around or not being there mentally, I guess. And she was in and out of a mental institution. She went to prison too for a while. And it just, so I guess the parental figures, I felt, at least looking back now, like I didn't really have that in the traditional sense. And I think they for sure fulfill that role for me. And now I've like become very conscious of it and aware of it and understand you can't be dependent and you need to find that internally and figure out how to motivate yourself. But I think that was definitely a part of it for me in the beginning. For sure. Was Jordan Peterson was like my dad. You know, and a lot of people say that. He became my internet dad. For sure. That's the case for me. Like I'm right there with anyone listening to this that has that same feeling of you're going through the realization that you're not where you want to be in life. Right now, you're maybe an addict on something. Maybe you're drinking every single night. Maybe you are in a horrible relationship that you don't want to be in. Maybe you ruined a relationship in the past that just you're feeling very bad about. I'm there with you right now, and it's okay. You know, it's okay that that's happening. You totally have people going through the same thing with you. So I guess that's another part of this podcast is to just be someone that doesn't mind voicing my shit and saying I'm going through this every single day, you know?
So you mentioned ego multiple times. Where does the ego fit into this? How does one develop an ego despite all these? I mean, what does that mean when you say letting your ego get the best of you? Or
I guess it means making decisions based on trying to get my pride back. Does that make sense? Like someone offended me. That's the primary thing.
But in retaliation, not
like in retaliation. And not like it fighting, that kind of thing, but just
no, I know
like,
what you mean.
Just like even at work, someone shows up late. I take that as they disrespect me. They don't respect the job. They must think I'm a bad manager. They think that they can show up late and I'm not going to do anything about it. And then just being in my mind about it, thinking about it all day, and it builds and builds and builds, never say anything about it. And it ends up being, that's how I was. And, all those little things, just taking things personally, like taking things personally and thinking of it from a selfish perspective. Everything's about me. This, I'm living this hard, harsh life and they don't get it. But everyone's living it. Everyone has a hard life. Everyone's going through something. And that's the realization I had. And I decided to try to be someone that can be there for you in your hard life now. Like I want to be there for you rather than me needing someone to support me. I want to be able to support you. That make a little bit more sense?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So do you have a value? Do you still find that you have a need for a non-virtual father?
I mean,
do you get supported by somebody?
Yeah,
or,
definitely.
Like, who do you look to if the Wi-Fi is down? Who would you go to?
I mean, I'm really, really independent. Like in my personal life here, like living here, just I'm very independent. But I do look like my ex's brother, and he's a really good friend, and he's been through all this with me, and I definitely find myself sometimes attaching to him as kind of that fatherly figure. But I'm aware of it. That's the difference I think that I had before, is I wasn't even aware that was happening. Now I'm aware of it, and I back off, and I know that okay, if I'm having a horrible day right now, things are going wrong, I can't expect someone to come be an aid to me. Like I need to figure out how to get through this on my own. I need to, and and I don't mean that in like, I want to isolate myself and just be by myself. I just want to be able to get through shit by myself, because I know stuff is going to happen in my life. It's like Goggins, how he says, embrace the suck. I think that's what he says. Just the struggle is where you learn who you are. So I still do have those moments and days where I feel like I kind of need the support from someone, or I kind of want them to give me that validation. But I'm very aware of it, and I try my best to at least be aware of it and conscious of it, even say it to the person, like at least put it out in the open so they understand it, and then it's out in the open and I can back off. Or I'm just learning about it every day. I'm learning every day, like I'm saying, how to understand that. I mean, I don't even know the best way to put it. I feel like I do need to be my leader, I guess, my father figure. It's becoming an adult, right? It's kind of that transition to kind of becoming an adult, becoming a man, becoming a woman. Is you kind of have to realize that your parents they're just people, and my parents, for me, kind of died in a psychological sense. I think Jordan Peterson has talked about that. They died psychologically a long time ago when I moved out here, maybe even before that. I stopped, like, I don't see them as my parents who are my supporters and my, I don't see them in that light anymore. I see them as people that I love, and they love me, and I want to take care of them. And I want, I want to share my life with them. But in terms of needing their emotional support and stuff, not there.
Yeah, I get that.
But I do find myself attaching. So I went to therapy, and I did that with the therapist. I was doing that kind of depending on that feeling of the motherly figure was. I went to a woman therapist and kind of was. That's kind of how it played out a little bit. So learning every day. I'm still learning. I'm trying to just learn to be. Like we've been talking about, just trying to learn to objectively, as much as I can, view my life, view these bad situations, and kind of try to think of it as, here's something that might be a better way to put it. Jocko had this clip that came out not that long ago where he talks about how to not overreact. And he was like, okay, when you're in a moment where you're about to overreact, when you're in a moment where you feel yourself getting tense and you those signs start coming up that you're about to overreact, just imagine being videotaped. And then imagine that you're going to watch that videotape back with the people you're with. And if you can have the will to have that thought, okay, I'm about to be videotaped, it'll help you not overreact. Because you'll be like, oh, I can't do that. I would not want to watch this back with these people.
Yeah, right.
And that's the feeling that I try to act out, but for everything in my life, not just overreacting, like every moment, as much as I can be aware of it, I try to think of that, how, I don't think, oh, how am I being videotaped? But I try to think about, what do I look like right now? How am I acting? How will they maybe see me in this situation? And then how can I, it goes back to that question of should, like, how can I get to the place where I feel I should be in this moment? But yeah.
To be the least regrettable version of you, or the person whom you might most admire in that moment. What would that perfect version of me do under this circumstance? At my most reasonable, level-headed, what advice would I give me right now?
That's a good way to put it.
So, that just made me think in really, really, I'm just thinking of codependence is the word that keeps coming back to my mind. In these relationships where one's value or one's sense of self-worth is really derived from what they're doing for other people, I want to say, what they give and not by what they get. And I don't mean get in the material sense that we're transacting goodwill, but in the sense that if I'm getting even growth, or if I'm being challenged in the right ways, I might be better next time at something.
Gotcha.
I'm curious if you relate to, if you've been exposed mostly to hardship, let's say, or a lot of one thing, then your radar might obscure a little bit.
Yeah.
And Goggins is a good public example of somebody whose radar is, his compass north is very specific. And pain and pleasure are really obscured in his from what he said. And so sometimes I wonder if putting oneself into harmful or painful situations is being misinterpreted as a good thing in and of itself, where just tolerating other people, just putting up with people is my task, and that's just who I am, and that's what I'm worth. So let's say, if I'm in a relational negotiation with you, and you say, Hunter, I think we really should blah, 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 and I really think it's a bad idea, or it's something that really irks me, and not in that, and I guess this is begging the question, but I might have a moment of reckoning where I think, is Cole trying to get me to do something totally unfair, totally against my best interest? And will I then convince myself that that is something that I quote unquote, have to do or I should do because it's good for me? Because, well, I just want to make you happy. And if I can endure it, if I can bear the cross, I'll just do it. And that's where the term martyr comes from, right?
Yeah.
But the typical martyr is somebody who appears never to be happy. They just appear to be satisfied that other people are happy.
Yeah.
And it's this external gauge. And I again, it was just like kind of, this is where my radar is
Gotcha.
For other people who are going through things. And the opposite is true too. So if that compass north is very skewed in the way that pain becomes ideal instead of an opportunity, and you're unconditionally like, yes, go to the pain, go do that thing and hate it. When maybe you don't necessarily have to hate your life to benefit from it. The South is true for me too. That radar, when I see somebody who's like, no, it's all pleasure, it's all just feeling good all the time. Like they think happiness is like being in a good mood. Where if I just feel nice, that's how I know life is going well. And just to revisit vulnerability, that to me is the vulnerability of that. I mean, in both situations,
for sure,
where one person can't exist, where there's no one to care for, I should say, and then the opposite, where someone can't be in a situation where they're uncomfortable.
Gotcha. Well, it's the balance.
I'm curious where you draw the line, or if you felt skewed one way or the other.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I agree with you. I think going to the extremes on either side isn't good, and you got to find the balance. And for me, I guess one way that I can kind of think about my kind of transformation was I know who I don't want to be. I know who I don't want to be, which was someone who, because it's relative. People's pain threshold is different. People's willingness to take on responsibility is different. People's even sense of what responsibility is different. And so I just went down that path of negating responsibility and just ignoring my values is the way that I kind of see it. And I went there, and now I know. So now I just have that behind me, motivating me forward. Now I know who I don't want to be. Who I want to be changes, and it will change, and that's going to always move. I'm never going to arrive, but I know who I don't want to be. So I'm just going to do everything I can now to not be that person again, which is be responsible, be a good father, do the best that you can at work, do the best that you can being a leader, be there for your family, be a good brother the best that you can, and don't think of yourself first. Like, and I don't mean that in a just, purely compassionate, like hippy dippy way. I mean it in don't chase that immediate pleasure, like what Jordan Peterson says. Don't chase the things that are going to please you immediately. You got to think more long term. You got to think what's best for the whole situation, what's best for the whole crew right now, not just what I want, not just what this person wants. What's the best thing for the whole crew or the whole situation or whatever. So I guess that's kind of where I'm at, is I know who I don't want to be, just trying to not be that, trying to learn myself every day, It's, definitely, I don't know. I'm learning every day about all this stuff. So are you at risk of taking on too much, or putting yourself into positions where you're going to regret tolerating that? I don't know about the pain is the right word, but of taking it on and convincing yourself that this is good for me. I mean, I probably am at risk of that, but I'm finding meaning in it. Finding happiness is not the word. Finding meaning in it is the word. That it is what gets me out of bed every day, is the responsibility. It is what makes me get up early every day. It is what drives me to try to do the best that I can at work and take on more responsibility at work. Try to do more if I can. Try to help the people I'm working with the best that I can. It does, I'm not happy all the time. I have really bad days, but even in those depressed states and unmotivated states, the responsibility of it pushes me through it. And then when I get through the bad day, I look back and I'm proud of myself of it. I'm like, thank God that you didn't react like you used to and have some anxiety about it and freak out. Like, thank God you pushed yourself through it and you made it happen. That's the feeling. So I'm sure I'm at risk of taking on too much. There are days where I do feel that, but I'd rather do that than go back to how I was before. Negating the responsibility.
Right.
So it's a balance. Like, I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to figure out what is my balance? When is it too far? When is it too little? Yeah, definitely trying to figure that out.
So what are you still worst at?
I, man, trying to think of, definitely, I definitely tend to be very, very hard on myself, for sure. Very hard on myself. I also, I can tend toward being hard on other people. Like at work, I have this guy working for us that he has so much potential, and I really love this guy, like friend to friend, but there's just things, he's younger and there's a lot of stuff, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and I can tend to like be hard on him, and I think it's because I'm hard on myself, right? I mean, that's why. Hard on myself, hard on this person, and I always regret it after. I always feel like, you know, and in the moment it feels like maybe this is what it needs to happen to get him to kind of wake up and realize certain things, but I never feel like it was the right move afterwards. And so that's definitely something I'm still struggling with.
Yeah,
it's kind of
gotcha.
reacting too quickly, maybe not, you know, but I got to give myself credit a little bit that every day there's something. And a lot of the time I'm able to kind of detach and look at things objectively, but that's definitely a struggle. It's something that I still need to work on for sure. You know, is I guess not being so reactive and just kind of remembering the compassion. This person is struggling with something, and how can I help? How can I actually help rather than just being hard or just kind of being a little bit stern? Like, what's the real answer to get this person to see the deeper thing here? You know, trying to figure that out.
So in the interest of balance, when do you have fun?
I mean, this is fun right now.
I agree.
You know, this is fun. When I see my daughter, I get that's the highlight of my day when I see her, you know, and I want to see her more. I want to get to a place where I have a better, you know, living situation where I can actually take her more and see her more. Cause that's, you know, no matter how bad the day is, when I see my daughter, I feel just that connection there, you know, that love there just completely can make me just not at all think about anything else.
Yeah.
Writing, you know, that kind of thing for sure gives me the joy. Just listening to these audiobooks and podcasts, 6 hours a day I probably spend listening to this stuff. Yeah. Like few hours in the morning, few hours in the evening, every time I'm in the car, that brings me pleasure for sure. The little things, the little routines, cooking my food.
Yeah.
Enjoy it thoroughly. Meditating, I enjoy it when I exercise just about every single day, just like a little routine exercise. That brings me pleasure. You know, kind of the little routines that I built, I feel like is where I do get a lot of my pleasure. Gets me through the hard days thinking, okay, well, at least I'm going to get home. I have my food to cook, have my exercise to do, I have my meditation, you know, the routines. I think routines are so important, getting in a routine.
Did you not have that?
No, did not have that.
Really?
Before.
Just made it up as you went?
Yeah, just made it up as I went, and it helped me a lot. And I think it's Jordan Peterson that talks about routines, but I feel like there was some other video or some other person I watched that talked about how important routines are. A lot of people talk about it, but I like went extreme with it. Every day you need a morning routine. Tim Ferriss talked about it.
Let's say if you meet a friend group or different people who don't necessarily have overlapping interests and you have to divide your time, what will it be like to break your routine?
Well, I mean, I break my routine for situations like that. Like I'm in an acting class, and when I rehearse, I kind of break the routine to make a rehearsal or to have them come here and rehearse. But I tend to, I feel like that's worth it. I feel like when something meaningful is going on, having a nice conversation like this, going to my acting class, going on a date or whatever it is, I feel like those are completely exceptions to break the routine. It's when you're going through that mundane, you don't have anything special going on, you're having a really hard day, you don't feel like exercising, that's when it's so important to stick to the routine. The routine is like a baseline.
I see.
You know, it's like a baseline that I stick to every day as much as I can. And then if something pops up that I feel good about, of course, go do that and come back to the routine as your baseline. Just don't not have a routine, because that's when I feel like when I break my routine for no reason and I just go a few days without, meditating, without exercising, without getting up early, I don't feel good. I do not feel good. So it's like the baseline existence.
Right.
Have your
right,
routine,
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So let's see.
do you have routines? You keep a morning routine, even your routine?
I don't know whether to call them routines. I try not to have habits, but
I can see that in you with the staying unattached, the meditation.
Something like that.
Yeah.
They're just. I think Ellen Langer said that they're inherently mindless. So if you do something just out of habit, I try not to do anything automatically. I fail at this most of the time, but I don't. I'd like to question whether I would be okay without doing it that way.
Gotcha.
Whether I'm attachment in the strict, and like if we're talking about the Buddhist sense, would be any form of clinging on to something, some state of the world where I think I'll only be okay under this circumstance.
Gotcha.
So I don't like to set myself up to be upset by breaking the routine.
Gotcha.
So it's not that adapting to total chaos is the ideal, but like there are things that I do regularly, right? But for example, I don't meditate at the same time every day, but I just make sure I meditate every day, or most days.
I mean, that's a good way to think about it. And I'm similar in that way where I don't exercise at the same time every day. Sometimes I do it in the morning, sometimes I do it in the evening, but I try to do it every day.
I see.
And I guess for me, to me, it seems like, and you're helping me understand it, is you're like getting at the deeper issue. You're getting past the routines, past the responsibility. What's the deeper issue, which is how to be okay in every moment, right? I mean, that's kind of like what you're getting at, is in a bad situation, during a good situation, when you're breaking your routine, when you're having a fight, how to be aware in that moment and be okay. That's like what it seems like you're.
That would be the ideal, or getting closer to it.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm far from perfect at these things, but it's the improvement is very real.
Yeah.
So you know when you suck less at doing something.
Definitely.
The next time you argue with somebody, the next time you feel discontent, like boredom disappears very quickly. And
it's like Sam Harris, how he says that
he's very good at explaining that. Yeah. And even I also really like to read fiction, and a lot of my favorite authors are people that never get bored, and it's amazing. It's not about having this circus life that's just constant amusement and entertainment, but something about always being able to think about something, always being able to see the world in some way. Hopefully it will shed light on the way the world actually is.
Yeah.
And fiction to me is not incompatible with that. If you're seeing it for fiction, if you're saying, well, this is just Shakespeare and we're going to read Shakespeare and it's Shakespeare and it's a story and it stays there.
Yeah.
And then I can use that material if I want, or I can apply it to my life. But you're not confusing the fiction for the reality.
Gotcha.
You're going, I'm just going to be amused by Shakespeare for a few hours.
Yeah.
And so similarly, I like to get into something for a while. But I do question myself sometimes if I think I need to do it this way, and my organic tendency is neurotic.
Gotcha.
And needing things to be a certain way.
Was there a time in your life where you were super routine, neurotic?
Oh no, yeah.
Super.
The people that know me the best would describe me as the most planned individual that they know. I'm a big planner.
Yeah.
That's not to say you always know what I'm doing at, it's 1 p.m., it's this. In fact, 5 days a week, my day is completely different. I do something different every single day of the week. So I do similar things on, let's say I see the same clients on Mondays and Wednesdays and Friday, but my day, the description of my day, my schedule is not the same any 2 days of 1 week, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I really like that. I like waking up every day and going, okay, who am I today? what I'm going to go to my private practice today. I'm going to this treatment center today. I'm going to teach today.
Here's something I want to propose. Ask you your opinion. Sounds to me like you find a lot of purpose in your job. You get a lot of meaning from it, right? It fulfills you being a therapist and being a psychologist. or, studying psychology, helping other people in that way. I mean, it just seems like that to me. Like you're pretty passionate about it. At least that's the feeling that I get.
Yeah.
And I feel that's an amazing thing. Like I definitely feel that to me, it seems like the whole meaning issue that like Jordan Peterson talks about, everyone talks about, is when you don't have that fulfillment, it's very easy to err on the side of nihilism and chaos. And I guess that's why for me, the routines and everything have been so important, because I was in a place of not feeling fulfilled in a kind of creative, ambitious, I'm fulfilling the passion that I have. My job now, I am so glad I got out of the hole I was in with it. And I found the appreciation and love for leadership. And man, I get so much and learn so much from that aspect of it. But for the longest time, there was no passion there, and there was no fulfillment. It was very hard for me and I still got up and went to work every single day. And I do think all that's tied together. So I guess for me, the routines and stuff keep me balanced when I'm feeling unmotivated.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They kind of like bring me back and say, okay, well,
right,
you're not fulfilling yourself creatively. You have your routine to kind of bring you back to the baseline. So, but that makes perfect sense what you're saying. And I think it's a goal of mine. You're shining light on it with, you need to realize the dependence on the routine isn't great, because it's going to break. There are going to be days where you can't do it, when shit goes sour, and you got to figure out how to like be okay on those days, for sure. I guess for me, it's, as long as I feel like I'm doing something that's stimulating me, and this podcast, this is like it for me right now. Like I'm loving this so much. It's going to keep me going for sure. Like, fuck my routine. I don't need to exercise tonight. Don't want to get to that place either. I'm like, don't need it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess that's kind of where I come down on that, is the routines are good when you're in there. It's a good way to discipline yourself. I guess it's just that simple. It helped me. It helped me so much with learning how to discipline myself, which now is going to help me with everything I do. Push through the hard times.
Yeah.
Do it.
It can reduce the cognitive load, is what they call it. You don't have to, it's just one less thing you have to think about.
Gotcha.
So if you instead of completely making it up every single day, every minute of the day, what am I going to do? How am I going to get there? What's this going to be like? You can, of course, falling back. I mean, everyone from the geniuses of history, Immanuel Kant supposedly was so regimented, people would set their clocks to his daily walks through the town.
Damn.
Down to a mentally disabled person or handicapped person that couldn't do it but for a routine.
Gotcha.
And so it helps anyone.
Yeah.
And then it's great that we have all the extra time and energy to do what we want with it.
Yeah.
And as far as finding meaning goes, I'm always fascinated by people's account of that.
Yeah.
And what's enjoyable is not always what's meaningful.
Yeah.
And
very true.
Hearing that two people spent their time doing something that they like doesn't mean that those are equally beneficial ways to spend their time.
Yeah.
I'm not even talking in a cosmic sense, just on a subjective level.
Yeah.
Who am I after this versus who am I after that? Who am I after? Maybe I love exercising or I love running, and I'll go run and I'll say, oh, that was so great, right? Another person will say, well, I really like torturing animals, and I just spent an hour torturing animals. You spent an hour running. We both enjoyed ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Even on its face, okay, those are not equivalent ways to spend one's time, right? And you could narrow that gap a lot. You might even narrow it so much that two people are meditating, but based on one person's meditation, they're doing something that is obscuring their reality or distracting them from what's really going on in their life. And the other person is doing some type of meditation that allows them to see the world more clearly. Those people are going to get up from the mat after an hour, and they're going to be two different people.
Very
and
true.
One of them will have benefited more than the other, even on a subjective level.
Yeah.
And I really worry sometimes. I guess I worry a lot, but I worry if I meet a client or if I talk to someone who will their goal, or they'll want to get to a place where they no longer experience discomfort. Or they'll say, I don't want to be nervous. Or help me never be sad. I can't help you do that.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone can help you do that. Anyone who promises to help you do that, I would be suspicious of that. You'll never be nervous again. Someone that will say, someone in recovery will say, help me not want to drink. Well, if you didn't want to drink, drinking wouldn't be a problem because you would just stop. So the problem is going to be that you will want to drink. So what about that?
Yeah.
You might want to lay in bed all day. You might want to do something else that might be ultimately a waste of your time.
Yeah.
But I when I check in with myself, I try to make sure that I'm not, for example, doing therapy for any of the wrong reasons. I'm not going, you know why I like therapy? Because I'm really important when I'm doing therapy. That would be a red flag for me, is that I'm getting a little too much out of this, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
In the way of pleasure. Oh, this is so good for me.
Yeah.
I get concerned sometimes when I talk to my colleagues that will say, so I told my client to blah, blah, blah. And giving really strong advice like that, it can be
Not
really
good.
problematic. Yeah. And I tend to question, what was your motivation for being an authority in that moment?
Gotcha.
Who was that for?
Yeah,
was that for you or was that for your client?
Gotcha.
That's an endless conversation. You could just go backwards in time. What is this for? What is this for? Is this getting me away from who I am, or is this getting me more in touch with that?
Gotcha. Yeah.
More power or less power?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's you mentioned you think it's so interesting, people's accounts of that, of meaning, like what that is. And it's such a good point. How do you, the feeling for me is, just simply put, I feel that sense of purpose, meaning when I am growing, if that means intellectually, emotionally, or even physically, those moments where I'm pushing myself and succeeding through it is when I feel that sense of meaning. But it must be just so different for everyone. Like the person torturing an animal.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you, that's such a crazy question.
That'd be way down the line. But I mean, it could be video games. It could be doing crossword puzzles. It could be any activity. Yeah. You're doing that and you're not doing something else.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely not of the ilk. So this is maybe where I part ways from someone like Goggins or Jocko.
Gotcha.
I find them very amusing, but not every moment of my life, like on my deathbed, what I'm going to be thankful for, what I'm going to be most proud of is not that one Tuesday I did those extra 50 push-ups. Sometimes that is exactly what I need to do.
Yeah.
And other times it's not.
Yeah.
And I speaking for only myself, I don't want to live a life where I was so busy or I was so just occupied in that bland sense that nothing really happened.
Gotcha.
I'm just doing and doing and doing and doing. And I was the exact same person on the other side.
Yeah. So what do you think, why do you think that is? What do you think characterizes people's need or want for that? Because I do feel like there are some people, Goggins is a good example of, that's who he is, like that's his personality, or however you want to phrase it, where he said it in one of his interviews. It's the feeling is that he is going to go see God, whatever you want to call it, when he dies.
And he's going to have to atone for it.
He's going to have to atone for it. And he's afraid that this entity or whatever you call it is going to say, oh, you didn't do this, or you could have done this and you didn't do it. So he feels like he's pushing himself to the fullest potential that he can. And it seems genuine that that's who he is. Like that's what he needs in his life. And
I would never argue with somebody about.
But I feel like he needs balance. I mean, when I see Goggins, there are some interviews where I'm like, man, I wonder. And it's obvious too, with the stuff that he experienced with his injuries, that he's physically hurting himself, pushing himself.
So I'll just throw it out there, just in the interest of this topic. I'm imagining if these guys were on the couch, as it were, if they were in front of me and they were my client, I see a giant gap in, I suppose, in all of their efforts. Let's say Jocko or Goggins or something, in all of their efforts to be strong and forthright and capable and challenged and especially physically, I guess capable is the right word, but just to be in charge.
Yeah.
I see the gap being, what if those are not the skills necessary to do the best job in this situation?
Yeah.
So when do those skills fall short?
Yeah.
Those skills aren't always going to be able to be applied to every situation to perform it optimally, right?
Yeah, it's true.
It's different if you're a fitness guru, or if you're Goggins and you say, to run a 100-mile marathon through Death Valley, these are the skills that it requires.
Yeah.
He is the first guy I'll go to, and I'll be like, teach me, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But if I am in a relationship, or raising children, or if I'm having a back and forth with one of my coworkers and I'm trying to be respectful and understanding and patient,
Goggins not the guy to go.
I probably won't go straight to him. Yeah,
at least not when he was. I feel like he's chilled that down a little bit.
I think so too. Yeah,
but
that doesn't mean these two men are not capable of that. I just mean that the stereotype of being masculine and forward and physically domineering is good for some situations.
Yeah.
And for all, let's say if I have 24 hours in the day and 18 of them are spent on being tough and resilient and pushing through, then that doesn't leave very much time for me to think about the other stuff.
Yeah, that's very
that
true.
doesn't leave time to get in somebody else's head and go, wow, why do I like being tough and dominant?
Yeah.
And can I do anything other than that?
Yeah. Well, here's something I want to get your opinion on.
Please. Yeah.
I've just had this thought, even with myself, I can attest to it from a firsthand experience, that for me, the reason why I like to push myself and get up super early and exercise every day and really push myself is because that conscience is so heavy. It's so heavy. Maybe for some people it just isn't. It just isn't heavy. Maybe that conscience, that voice, that thing telling them, oh, you need to do this, or questioning whatever it is, it's just not as loud, and it never will be. I mean, is that is that maybe
the
possibly
conscience, that critical voice you were describing?
that critical voice? Because for me, now that I know how I can push myself and where I can go, when I don't, I feel that feeling of like patheticness kick in.
Yeah.
Like that conscience, the critical conscience of, why aren't you doing this? You didn't do it. You didn't do it today. Like it kicks in, and I don't feel like I have control over it.
I see. But could you clarify what is that conscience, that voice perks up?
Yeah.
What are you doing in response to that? You're getting up, and are you doing the thing that avoids the criticism?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay, I'll get up.
I guess so. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, like I get up usually at like 4:05, sometimes 4:30. Sometimes I exercise first thing in the morning. Sometimes I do whatever, riding, just that kind of thing before I get to my day job. And when I don't get up early, when I push the snooze, when I sleep in, I feel pathetic because, and I don't have an opinion on other people's.
No,
it's different for every person.
Talking about yourself.
But yeah, for me, it's like now that I know I can do this, and I also know how good I feel kind of pushing myself in that way, I feel shitty when I don't do it. And that voice is, why didn't you? You could have. Now you're going to, miss out on this, or you didn't get the thing done that you should have. And it's like this loud that voice, and maybe that just varies from person to person. Some people, like I feel like Goggins has
100%
yelling at him in every moment, and he said that. I mean, he said something similar to that.
Yeah. What I love about Goggins and Jocko is they're very transparent about what they respond to best.
Yeah.
And they are the kinds of guys in their Venn diagrams are almost a perfect circle, right?
Yeah.
But they are the kind of guys who need to be told, put your shit aside. You're going to sleep 6 hours a day, not 8. You're going to get up and you're going to do the thing, and you're going to be in pain, and like be okay with that, right?
Yeah.
And then there are not them. There's other people. I have a case that if you don't mind my sharing, that illustrated a lot for me.
For sure.
So in the interest of individualizing one's needs and values and things, we're all doing this kind of alone. I had a client. She was over 60. She was, aging, and she was really overweight, obese, had a lot of pain, had an autoimmune disorder, constantly in pain, and could not lose weight. And I saw her for years, probably 3 years, maybe 4 years.
Gotcha.
And she was sweet as can be, lovely person, came every week. And I was just getting to know her, and she would complain a lot about other people, about family members and people that bugged her, and how inconsiderate other people were. And so it's just kind of putting the pieces together. And I had really good supervision at the time. I have a lot of great, very wise mentor therapists in my life that were saying, just be patient with this person, that you never know what's underneath,
Gotcha.
right? And it would seem like a simple solution. I also worked in a clinic, in a treatment center, where her doctor was on site, and we would talk, and the doctor would be like, she needs to lose this weight. She's going to be,
Yeah.
And so every week I was careful never to say, 'cause first of all, my job is not to tell people to lose weight, and I'm not a nutritionist in the first place. And there's a reason.
Was she complaining about it to you?
Oh yeah.
Gotcha.
She would say, I need to get this weight off. And
Gotcha.
so I talked to my doctor, I'm going to see a dietitian, and just the whole 9 yards.
Gotcha.
And so I would see her, and I, through her, you get to know about what her family members are like, and she was really, really obsessed with people being inconsiderate of her, being rude to her, expecting things of her. And so I would ask, what is it that you do, or how is it that you treat other people? How do you take these responsibilities on? And she would describe, she just has no backbone. She could not self-advocate.
Gotcha.
Couldn't speak up for herself. And it would just pain her so much to set a boundary with people, or to say, no, I can't pick up the kids today, or I can't be there for this meal, or, I really don't like being made fun of by your spouse, so I don't want to go to this family gathering. Couldn't do it. Just
Gotcha.
like a doormat is the way she described herself. And so I kept going back to the weight, and I was like, what is this? It seems like this simple, it's just caloric intake, right? Just all my naive conception. And over time, one of my supervisors said, I think there's something, there's a reason, like kind of asking, what is the function of this weight, rather than what is the dysfunction?
Gotcha.
The dysfunction's obvious. So surely it's not a question of, hey, did you know that you can lose weight if you just eat less, right? You exercise more. No one needs to be told that if they're 62 years old. So again, I'm sitting this out, and finally one day she tells me that a close family member sexually abused her systematically for a while during her early teenage years. And that was a big disclosure, that moment, and it was finally a moment where she let me detect her vulnerability. It wasn't even paradoxically, it wasn't even about the family member. It was about her. Gotcha. And she was just discussing this thing that had happened. But then she just gave me revelation after revelation. And she said, by the way, I binge eat every night. And it's my routine. And it's a routine specifically because it's mindless. She says, it's the only time of day where I don't have to worry about anyone else. And with sexual abuse, it's so complicated, especially when someone is young, especially a child.
God, I can only imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it's awful always, but I'm using her as an example because she put this in perfect language. I, as the therapist, didn't have to do any interpreting. I didn't have to come up with a story about it. And she said, in being abused, I felt responsible for myself and my sister to avoid her being abused by this family member, and for the person abusing me, because I didn't want to stir the pot. So what did I do since that day? I kept my mouth shut. And I married someone who took advantage of me emotionally in a lot of ways. And I've never been in a relationship where I was respected. And that is my role. So all day I wake up and I put up with people, and I come here to therapy and I complain about them. and which is fine because that's a great function of therapy. And then she said, I found like sweets were her thing, and eating a lot of sugar and carbs
Yeah.
can give you this kind of warm, almost like an opiate feeling.
Yeah, yeah.
And she says, I binge, I put on mindless television, and I have this routine. And I just lay there and I go, finally, only me. And so I asked her, it's quite a consequence, this weight that you've put on. And she said, it's amazing because my life is completely out of control. I have no boundaries. And when I eat, it's the only time I feel in control of my life. And yet I eat completely out of control. And
I think I see where you're getting at.
Yeah. So it was awesome to have this lady as a client, despite how sad her life story was.
Mm-hmm.
But over time, again, just like I said at the beginning of the conversation, the progress is hard to detect, just like finding meaning.
Yeah.
It'd be hard to follow you around and go, okay, I know what gives Cole's life meaning without knowing you, without you telling me that. And so this woman improved in a lot of ways that you wouldn't expect, but mostly it was in process. It was how she related to her past, to the significance. She could come and she could say, I had one of those moments where someone takes advantage of me or expects something of me, and I got mad, like I always have. But instead of reacting automatically and mindlessly, it became a much more conscientious process, and she could take the matter into her own hands a little bit more. And how are we going to heal 60 odd years of abuse and difficult relationships? We might not heal it in the way that we would expect of ourselves, but what healing looks like in that case is very different.
Yeah.
So anyway, all that being said, imagine if this woman met Jocko instead of a therapist. And he said, what's your problem? Wake up at 4, get on the ground, do 50 push-ups, and then, lay off the hamburgers and that's not what was going on, right?
It's such a good
different problem
way to frame that problem. Because for sure, Jocko and Goggins, they push that notion of personal responsibility, Jordan Peterson, personal responsibility. But there are some things that, like you just laid out an amazing case of how do you get that person to like act that out and really get it? I mean, there are some real things, some tangible, deep-rooted things, issues there that would make it just, man, how would you get that person to like go there and understand that? And start acting it out, actually.
Absolutely. And what I do appreciate about anyone that's working on their own platform, like any of the guys we've been mentioning, Jocko, and like I said, they're very clear that they're not insisting that they have a hammer and every problem is a nail. They're just saying, for anyone this might benefit, get your act together.
For sure.
Super. Great.
Yeah.
But what I like about the therapy aspect, which is that really you are limited to one life at a time. Even if I see families and couples, it's still, you're dealing with every individual, but you can't do therapy with 500 people at the same time and really get, maybe if you go to a Tony Robbins event, there'll be this like kind of superficial therapy thing going on. Like, tell me about your dad, tell me about your mom. This is what it looks like. Boom, go fix your life. But really to hear that out and go, I mean, it took this woman 3 years just to again, just if I'm being a good meditator, to see the world as it is, to acknowledge, to sit with that and go, whoa, this is who I am. And I admire her for that. She was fantastic. For sure. And, but you would never know. You don't know that that's the case ahead of time. You don't know what you're working with until you leave so much space. I mean, do the math, right? 52 weeks a year and times 3, this is hundreds of hours altogether from the day one and the last day.
Yeah.
So when it works, great. And you can just dig deep, wake up, do the thing, get out of bed. And then for someone else, you might, if you give a little more patience, if you do a little less, you throw less into the mix.
Yeah.
That's one less voice. I mean, you can imagine if I was like a little more insistent and I didn't perform perfectly. I had a lot of good guidance, and there's a lot that I could have done better with this particular lady. But in essence, my goal was to let her decide what was important to her, and she let me in.
Yeah.
And so I really try not to insist that people owe me an explanation, or that they tell me, okay, what's going on right now, and then go problem, solution.
Gotcha.
That is a really enticing method for me. For me, the therapist, my job would be very easy. What is it again? You have to do it. Okay, here you go, right? I'd be the one session therapist, right? New caseload every week. You come in, I give you the thing, and you go out. And insofar as you're not doing well, it's because you're messing up, right? So you come back to me and I tell you how you're still messing up. And then when your life gets better, I'm the reason. And that would be very convenient. But I don't, that's not why I like it. And just with our friendships, right? Is this the third rule? Peterson's third rule is make friends with people who want the best for you.
I think so. I'm not sure. I don't have them memorized.
And something like that. And yeah, so you go to a friend, and how they respond or how they feed back what they hear, or they reflect back what they hear might have a lot to do with what's going on with them at that moment. If they're uncomfortable, if I go to Jocko and I say, I'm just really struggling in my relationship, and he gives me this pointed, like, well, you know what you got to do? You got to go, in the middle of the night, wake them up, talk to them about,
whatever it is, whatever his thing is.
But the space, the talking about balance, where that skill might be lacking would be in any situation that's not that same one, where we're not on a naval ship somewhere, deployed. But I do admire the military mindset in that they never confuse comfort for happiness. They never would tell you just need to be more comfortable and that'll make you happy. Because I also think that's a lie. That can't be true.
Yeah, for sure.
Pardon.
Yeah.
So
that makes perfect sense. And then I have one question I'd ask is, with this lady, the overweight client that you had, or anyone kind of in that similar situation, it sounds to me like the feeling of chaos was her kind of fundamental issue that drove her to do the things that she was doing and feel the suffering that she was feeling. And just to be devil's advocate, if she would start doing the shit Jocko says, wouldn't that have helped her? I mean, if she would have started waking up early, doing things, changing, taking control, that seems like that would have been helpful for her. Like it actually would have gave her that control, help her get, rather than the eating. She could have used those things for the control. Well, but it's like, how do you get that? How do you get that across without? Because
it's a great
there's
question.
No way Jocko, like she would have hated Jocko or anyone who's in the middle of something like that. At least even from my perspective, you see them in this bad light as a judge, negative, not good. So I mean,
well, absolutely. That's. I often and any therapist I talk to struggles. There's another phrase called countertransference. So there's transference where the client is kind of painting something on you, and countertransference is where you, the therapist, are reacting to the client reacting.
Gotcha.
So if you, the client, remind me of my cousin or my ex or something like that, then I might start treating you weird, or I might start being impatient with you.
Gotcha.
So that's the importance of us, of a therapist going to our own therapy, going to consultation, et cetera, that those other people can go, what's your problem? This person doesn't annoy me. What is it? And then you go, oh yeah, right. There's something about me, right? And I often want things for my client that they don't want. And it's a struggle to back up from that.
Yeah.
I have another quick case that was the perfect example of this. I had a client who was just in the most annoying relationship ever. I saw this man as an individual, but he was an adult and just would complain every week about his relationship. Oh, and it's terrible. And he seemed depressed. I mean, legitimately, it seemed bad. It seemed like he was not happy. And every week I would just go, well, what's so good about this, about your partner? Why? Come on, And then, and every week he would make excuses and write it off. He would defend his partner and say, no, it's really not that. It's not that bad. I need to learn how to be with this person better. And I'm thinking, there's no way you're going to be happy with this. I'm thinking this.
Yeah.
And I go to, again, a wise supervisor, and I stated the case, and I said, so what do I do? And the supervisor said, what's your goal for this client? And I read the treatment plan goal. I said, well, to reduce depression. And he said, no. What is your goal for this client? And I said, I want them to break up, right? And I was honest about it, but I was frustrated.
For sure.
And the supervisor was like, yeah, whose problem is that? That is not why you're here. That. Did he say that? No. Well, then why are you trying to make that happen? It was great perspective.
Gotcha.
It's what I needed to hear. And so the minute I backed off and I started coming from a much more neutral place, like maybe this relationship works for this guy. Maybe he's not kidding that this is exactly what he wants. Then he started going in on his partner and
why?
Making
why
the case.
Is that?
I don't know for sure, but another clinician has suggested that the relationships we get into in the first place don't tend to be coincidences either.
No.
That we could be with anyone and we choose who we're with, right? And even friendships. And whatever it's like for this particular guy to feel this way with his partner might be familiar or maybe, if not enjoyable, if not pleasurable, then just recognizable, manageable. And you get to see how people recreate those relationships everywhere. So maybe and this is not just therapy, this is everything, right? If I'm an authoritative, overbearing person, I might become friends with people who want that. I might become friends with people who come off as what you might call weak or passive because they look to me to tell, vice versa. If I'm kind of weak and a little shy, I might be attracted to people who are also shy or people who are more likely to tell me what to do.
Gotcha.
And you imagine somebody who's hating their relationship and wants to go somewhere to complain about it might want me in on it, right?
Gotcha.
Yeah, you hate my partner too, right? Gotcha. And that gives them a little credibility.
Makes perfect sense, actually.
And makes me become another person who's frustrated with him.
Gotcha.
And that's familiar, and that's like, I know what to do with that.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a process there. It's not just the content, right?
Yeah.
But you had just mentioned something great about I was thinking about necessary and sufficient conditions. And like in philosophy, you might say something is true when this is the case, but this is what has to be the case, or this is what could be the case to make this thing true. So let's take sobriety. I work in addiction. I've always worked in addiction, actually. So let's say I can't kick heroin, right? I'm just every day of my life, I can't get away from it. Can't make decisions that get me sober.
Yep.
I could say, I have a solution for you. I will pick you up tomorrow at your front door. I'll drive you to an airport, and I will drop you off. I'll parachute you over a desert island, and you'll be stuck there for the next, indefinite amount of time until you feel ready to come back to civilization. You will be sober.
Yep.
And every day I'll drop off food, I'll parachute food in a crate, and you'll be by yourself on a desert island, and you will be sober from heroin.
Yep.
That would be a sufficient condition for sobriety. Is it necessary? Maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe there's another way.
Yeah.
Maybe it is necessary, but if I came out with a book tomorrow and I said, everyone, I've cured addiction. If you have an addiction, come to me and I will make it happen. And I just dropped people off in the Polynesian islands, one person per island with no way off. I would have 100% success rate.
Yeah.
Right? And I would. But that's not what people mean typically when they say, I want to get sober. They mean, I want to get sober and live in the civilized world with meaningful relationships and what would otherwise be considered a normal or ordinary life.
Yeah.
So necessary conditions, like I'm thinking of back with my client or Jocko might say, I can change your life, right? And he's right. He definitely can. And he says, you wake up at 4 a.m., you exercise, you do blah, blah, blah. That would get the client to an end goal, which by definition would be consistent with what she wants.
Yes.
But it ends up with further exploration. It ends up not being the whole picture.
Yeah.
That what she meant by I want to get better is I want to do the right things.
Gotcha.
I want to be the one who says, this is how I want relationships to go. This is how I want to spend my time. These are and maybe these are compromises I am willing to make.
Yeah.
That someone like Jocko might say, you can't make those.
Yeah.
Like if she says, I don't have enough time in the day to exercise because I'm taking care of grandkids or other people.
Yeah.
Maybe she's telling the truth. Maybe grandkids are way more important than exercise. So she's got to focus on diet. And someone like Jocko might say, sorry, you can't have both.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, so closing the gap,
Yeah.
like in therapy, I always discover something new about the client when they connect the dots somehow, and they'll say, oh, and by the way, this is another thing that I need to be the case. I need to stay married. Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay. By the way, I have this, my children, or I have this commitment at AA or at church, and this has to be in my life.
Gotcha.
So it's not as simple always.
For
You know
sure.
what I mean?
And I mean, so that could be the reason why people are so different in terms of the way I put it with the conscience in my head. It is about control too. When you frame everything in that light, it is like, it definitely is a way for me to have control, make a choice to do something. And I'm sure it's the same for Goggins and Jocko. And, I definitely can see that that's a huge role in it. And also the Goggins way of putting it, fulfilling whatever God, you're going to meet God after. He's going to tell you, oh, you could have done this, and being afraid of that. Because someone asked me that question, why do you want to do the things you're doing? What is this ambition? And I thought about it, and the best way to phrase it is, I'm afraid that I'm going to be on my deathbed and look back and feel like I didn't do enough. I'm afraid of that happening.
Enough what?
Enough. Just I didn't do enough.
Enough
things.
Development?
Yeah, like enough growing. I guess if I had to really pin it down, I would say the fear is that the simplest way to put it is I didn't fulfill the potential that I have within me enough. That makes sense. I'm afraid of being on my deathbed, looking back and regretting that I didn't fulfill my potential enough. And I know, not a great thing. I've been told, like,
why do you say that?
Well, I understand why that is. If that's your primary focus and that's what drives you, you will miss out on the moment a lot of the time.
I see.
And
you'll be doing something for another, for some end goal or something.
Yeah,
And would you ever get there?
There are certain goals you're going to achieve, and there are things you're not going to achieve, and you're never going to arrive, right?
Oh, certainly that. And I'm curious, would you even know if you did arrive? How would you know that you've done it?
Well, I guess you could get into religion there, and people will say, well, God, you're going to be judged when you die. I'm not necessarily
different
religious.
question than yeah, right. But my question in that case would be, do you want to wait until you are actually dead to know what it was like to be alive?
Yeah, I mean, that's such a good question, and it's something I think about all the time. And it's part of that balance, and trying to detach the balance is, I do want to fulfill the ambition I have. I don't feel good when I'm not paying enough attention to that ambition and that feeling that I can do more, and the feeling that I can, there's potential in me that I need to fulfill. I don't feel good when I'm ignoring it, but I also know that there is no arriving, and that that having those expectations will lead to failure. Like, undoubtedly, I'm gonna fail. I'm not gonna hit those expectations every time.
Yeah.
And so it's going to lead to those bad times. And it happens to me. It's a struggle that I have days where I feel horrible because I had those high expectations. Things didn't turn out the way I want. And it leads to the failure. A lot of stuff that I've done, a lot of the writing and screenwriting and pursuing acting led to me feeling shitty because it didn't turn out the way I wanted. But there's a balance of, well, for me, like on a personal level, if I'm not pursuing it, I feel shitty. But then when I pursue it and nothing turns out the way I want, I feel shitty. So what's the balance? I feel like the balance for me is pursue it with everything you have, but don't attach to it. Do your best to not have those expectations, which is why it's so important to find what's meaningful to you. Because I could do this for the rest of my life, even if no money comes from it, even if it doesn't end up being my career and build to how I'm envisioning it. I could sit here and have these kind of conversations for the rest of my life, be happy doing it, and I guess that's how I'm finding the balance.
So when you're describing meaning, are you talking about doing something for its own sake?
Yeah, like doing something for its own sake. Doing this right now for this. Me and you, we're sitting here, we're present, we're paying attention, and I feel like I'm growing. I feel like I'm learning. I feel like we're going deep, and it's an amazing feeling. I'm feeling super engaged and stimulated and I'm doing it for its own sake. I'm not thinking about what's going to happen when I turn the camera off and start, I'm just here with you, trying to pay as much attention.
Right.
And I definitely think a lot of people struggle with, they don't have that. They do not have that in their life. They have a job that they don't like. They have responsibilities that don't give them that meaning. Which is funny because Jordan Peterson says responsibilities are what give you meaning, right? And it is true to an extent. Having a job that you have to get to, where the consequence, if you don't get to it, leads to money being lost and whatever, that's meaning. It's just not.
Might mean something.
Yeah, I mean, it's meaning, but it's not like fulfilling your soul or whatever you want to call it. It's meaning, and it will get you out of bed, but it's not, for some people, it's not stimulating them and making them feel like they are meaningful or they have purpose, which I definitely feel like is one of the issues. Jordan Peterson talks about a lot, the people not feeling like they have meaning and purpose. It's like what I was experiencing, like I had no why in my life,
Yeah.
And,
I go back and forth on this too, because I live in the West, as do you. And I think I kept asking about the word ego that you were mentioning. It's not that it doesn't make sense as a word, just as a phrase.
Yeah.
But in meditation circles and in Buddhism especially, the idea is to get rid of the ego dissolution, or anatta, like selflessness, that if you dig deep enough, you notice that there's nothing there. You are the culmination of all your thoughts and memories and experiences and things like that. But there's nothing, there's no homunculus, there's nothing else there other than your conscious experience.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, other people have said this much better than I could, but I see the conflict between, and there are great books. Mark Epstein is a great writer about this, about how to feel what you might call fulfilled, or to find meaning or purpose without being something. And I just noticed in your description of doing something for its own sake and not feeling like I'll be okay when.
Yeah.
I can identify with that confusion to think I am this, and therefore I'm as good as what I am doing, and I can be proud of me when I have released my project, my musical project, I'm in this friendship and I feel really good about it. I'm a good friend. And you identify with being that. Yeah. And again, what a recipe for disappointment. If you cease to be that thing, shit goes really wrong really fast. Very much. And you if you're just buzzing, if you're just humming around like a 5 out of 10, if it's only routine, if there's nothing rewarding, if there's nothing new, you don't get the experience. You become such a self that you don't experience anything else. Yeah. You don't get to see what is that like to not know who I'm supposed to be right now. Yeah. Not be perfectly comfortable, let's say. If I go, if I walk into my group of 3 of my best friends, it's very easy to feel like, oh, I know who I am right now. But if you go into a brand new situation, or a lot of people will say their fear of public speaking has to do with this. They're strangers. I don't know what it's going to be like. I don't know what's going to be going on in their head. Who am I? How am I going to be perceived by them? and it's going to be some, a label or an identification. And then I am this person. I am like this. And I'm entertaining. I'm boring. I'm mean. I'm nice. And again, if you don't just observe what that's like, or if you're not sure what is going on in your own head, you will never know what's going on in someone else's head.
For sure.
Because it's always going to be filtered in some way, right? Even a piece of feedback, someone will say, "Oh, you're such a nice guy."
Yeah.
But what does that mean?
Yeah.
If you don't, do you want that person's opinion? Is that valuable to you? Why is that person's opinion so valuable to you and not this person's?
For sure.
So any goal I find, if I question where I got that motivation, if I say, okay, exercising every day, even if it's all the stuff that I want to be doing, exercising, meditating, reading, having deep relationships, having blissful experiences, those are important to me. I leave a lot of room to still question that. Okay, wait. Am I just buying into something? Is this another story I'm telling myself? Is this really making me happy? Am I confusing meaning for pleasure? Am I telling myself that just because I like doing these things, it does give my life meaning? Do I feel purposeful because I feel important?
Gotcha.
And how much of my life do I want to do things because I feel important?
Yeah.
And when I cease to feel important, am I going to quit? All those questions.
For sure,
right?
for sure.
They're just questions.
No, it's such a good, what do you think about the notion, it's the detachment? I feel like it's simultaneous with it, but Jordan Peterson specifically says it in a way. He said, I don't know exactly the quote, but he said, when you realize that you're the, I don't even know the best way to put it. When you realize that you're the entity experiencing the growth of your life, rather than being in it and experiencing the struggle and going through it and having the ups and having the downs, that the actual goal is to get meaning in your life from the playing of the whole overarching game of life, which just sounds a lot like what you're saying is the meaning shouldn't come from, I want to do this podcast and this is going to give me meaning. It's almost like the meaning comes from, it's a complex idea.
Peter, you could tell me if you really, if you know something I don't about Peterson's point of view, but
gotcha.
He has this weird commitment to Christianity, and I call it weird because it's not strictly religious. It's not religious in the conventional way that we say, oh, the person's religious. They've taken on this kind of common set of dogmas or doctrine. He talks about the Bible like it's Shakespeare, like a person who only reads Shakespeare.
Yeah.
If I said, yeah, well, you like Herman Melville, you should read Shakespeare.
Yeah. And
you're like, no, I know, but I also, and he's like, no, you really should read Shakespeare.
Yeah. I definitely see that. And I my disclosure is that I haven't read the Bible. I haven't sat down and read the Bible cover to cover or anything. But I guess the way that I see it with him is that, it's just my opinion, is that to me, it seems like he thinks the Bible is the most well-articulated story of being a human on this earth. Like the story of why and how to live a good life, what that means, how do you interact with other people. He goes super deep into the psychology of the Bible. And
I've listened to the lectures.
And I guess that's what I get from him, is that he just seems to think that the Bible is the best articulated version of that story. He idealizes it, for sure.
So I don't know, because I'm not him. He doesn't seem to give a perfectly straight answer about the divine nature, and he's been asked, but anyway, that's his prerogative, right?
Well, he said this in one interview. I'm going to butcher this again. We talked about it a little bit in the IDW discussion, but he said in one interview, and I actually found it very interesting and I related to it a lot. Just the whole idea of hierarchies, the idea that women throughout history have been the sexual selectors driving evolution, and men compete with each other to be at the top of hierarchies, and women select the men at the top of the hierarchies. And that's kind of been I don't think he says the primary, but it's been a big component of what's driven evolution for things to kind of end up the way they are. And he says that, I guess, the Christian version of God is this ingrained biological archetypal image of the man at the top of all the hierarchies. And that's like biologically ingrained in us because we've been experiencing that for so long in the history of living this life as humans, whatever, that it's now like ingrained in us, this God, at the very top of the hierarchy. And so he thinks that's the case he makes for God from a like biological perspective. But then he went in this interview, I think it was Dave Rubin, he went further and said that he believes that there's like a metaphysical structure underneath that mirrors the biological structure, which I thought that was interesting, and I see how that makes sense. I personally do have, I'm not religious in the traditional sense. I wouldn't call myself Christian or anything like that, but I just, I believe in something bigger, whatever you want to call it. I sometimes delve into like simulation theory and believe this is a fucking simulation. We're living in this is what it has to be. Everything makes sense to say this is a simulation. Even like what atoms and particles and shit are made of, which
just if you're running the odds.
Yeah, like it's all information. We live in an information-based reality. And so I tend to sometimes think that's what it is. I mean, but I don't know. And I explore all kinds of different ideas, but I guess that's what it seems like to me, where Jordan Peterson comes down on it. I don't know. I mean, even Yuval talks about stories and how important stories are. We evolved to gossip with each other. That's why I evolved. It's all like stories of what the fuck it is to be a human. Why is it hard? How to get through it. And it's, I think you're getting at the deeper reality, which is, all that matters. And there is all these stories, and religion can help, and being atheist, being like this a Sam Harris type is all that matters. But there's something much deeper, which is what it sounds like you're getting at with the meditation and the being okay in every moment, the being unattached. It's like there's this different level of living that you can be in, which is where you're just, none of that is, you're not attached to any of that stuff, just there's something much deeper. There's a different thought process or level of consciousness that you can have where you understand how important it is to not attach to ideology, not attach to, even if you are religious, there's just something deeper, whatever that is, to that, because no matter what ideology you have, no matter what things you attach yourself to, if you're Christian, there's gonna be shit that's gonna knock you down. How are you okay with that? What do you do in those moments when, like, I don't know. I mean, you know what I mean? You know what I'm getting at? Like this deeper, more fundamental level of existence that's like almost as if you're tapping into consciousness. Just what that is. Just consciousness, just the existence of awareness. Like you tap into that, you know.
Just to piggyback on that, the potential conflict I see, this is where it'd be nice if Yuval and Peterson spoke, that the conflict I see would be the Christian notion of having a soul or a self. I don't know how else to say this. I just don't think it's true. And when something, Peterson's very good actually at describing this. When something is not true, that will emerge. You will bump up against that somewhere, somehow. Which is partially why lying is so unethical. You're just closing a door to what the world really looks like. There really is a world on the other side of that door. but you just close it temporarily and you replace it with a falsehood, and then you can't really do anything with that.
Yeah.
You can't use that information, right? But where Peterson starts to get a little wishy-washy is when he uses words that most people are using in I want to say a literal or a serious sense, like divine or spirit or transcendent. And he's not saying, oh yeah, it's this thing in you, the spirit, it goes to heaven, it goes to hell.
Yeah.
And these are theme parks in a supernatural galaxy. And he's saying, no, of course not. I'm a man of science, or I'm big on data and research, and but somebody's spirit, like he said in an interview, Jesus' spirit lives on. And the interviewer said, could you clarify that? And he says, yeah, like his spirit lives on in his essence or his reputation and things. And I think where Yuval might push back, which I'd be excited to see if they spoke.
Yeah, that'd be so cool.
He might say, yes, but why are you prioritizing this story? Because I think you're giving a confusing message, which is this story is helpful or the story is true.
Yeah.
And Peterson would say they're the same thing.
Gotcha.
I don't think that's true, personally.
I see that. I'm going to try to explain kind of the feeling that I get when I think about all of these people talking about all this stuff, which is, I think religion, I think all religions, I think even Goggins and his story and Jocko and his story and Jordan Peterson and all of this is, it's trying to understand. I mean, they're all stories. They're all stories about trying to understand how to get through this life without killing yourself, without doing horrible things that will harm you and harm other people. It's all of them have the same goal and purpose, all in different ways, but they're all trying to get at what is the story of being a human being on Earth in this universe? What's, how do you articulate the stuff that's so unknown and bring it down to a level where you can kind of understand it? How do you articulate the intricacies? They're all stories of trying to like that's how I think of Christianity is like a story. It's a fictional story that they came up with at their time. There was no science back then, and it's a story that they told to try to articulate how to live a meaningful life, how to do good, how to get through the suffering.
Sure.
It's a story trying to understand how things came to be, and now we have science, which is getting us there in a more objective way, which is why religion, at least this is my opinion, that science has obliterated religion, because religion was trying to do what science is objectively doing now. But science doesn't tell you how to be a good person. And so that, I guess that's Jordan Peterson's. A lot of these people, that's kind of the dichotomy.
A story versus the story.
Yeah, see, I'm not with Jordan Peterson there. I don't think I don't think Christianity is the story. I think it's a story. Yeah. The good one. I mean, I think
I would love, I would love, so Jordan Peterson, if you're out there, I'd be happy to see you in my private practice pro bono.
God, man, I can't imagine.
No, I would just love to. I'd love to. I have to know what is the attachment to that story.
Yeah, it's
and
curious,
in an interview,
definitely.
he says things like, "No, it's true. Like it's not just a story, but I don't know. Maybe it's just because I disagree. I'm finding myself.
I get what you're saying. Like it's very curious.
Like wondering. I think it's just because I see his account, his attachment to. And I'll just clarify really fast. My desire not to attach isn't, I want to say it's the opposite of pulling away. That's why detached versus unattached are so important to me.
Gotcha.
Detached would imply that I'm just turning a blind eye and that I am somehow over here.
Gotcha.
And the rest of the world is over there. And we all know people like that who just nose to the grindstone, just get through my day, just force myself. That's kind of that was the pain vibe that I get sometimes from the military types. Like life just sucks and deal with it kind of thing. Yeah. And to me, that leads to weird places where you are you are enslaved to everything else, and you never really have an experience.
Yeah.
You just are doing stuff, and you just get through the day, and you're just pleasing people, and you're just like, okay, what now? What is it that? And I feel bad because I want relationships with people, and if that person is always taking care of me, even just emotionally,
Yeah.
I can't give back.
Yeah.
You know, I can't connect. There's no point of contact, right?
No.
It's a one-way street. And I wonder right now, if you really told me what it was like for you, no reservations, you know, no barriers. You just told me, you know what I hate, you know, in a weird way, that would be refreshing sometimes.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So anyway, so going back to being unattached, if I did all my work to investigate who I am, you don't just lose. It's not like you just lose all your character or your personality. You don't just become this robot, you know. You just shed what was making you miserable, and you don't miss it. And then you have all this extra space to just enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, wow, it doesn't hurt anyone for me to indulge and watch a funny movie and eat ice cream.
Gotcha.
Great. You know,
yeah, that's such
I
an
don't
amazing
need it. I'm not
way
going to like, you know, suffer if I don't.
Yeah.
But like, you can just do that. And again, this is the paradigm. This is not the life. I'm not enlightened in, but I love the idea that we suffer needlessly and that it's optional. Boom. And you can start there.
Yeah, I think that's just a great way to put it, that it is optional. And I found in my own life, I can have that perception shift. Like I can view this situation different. It's almost like, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to feel the pain. I can just perceive this situation different. And I tend to try to perceive struggles as moments to learn and grow. And I'm still going to have some pain, and I'm still going to have my ego pop up, but I got to learn. I got to grow.
Yeah.
What do you think? I'm curious just what your thoughts are. We kind of tapped on a little bit, but what are your thoughts on consciousness?
I don't have very many.
Right.
I know that my thoughts occur within consciousness.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm sympathetic to the consciousness as an illusion. Sam Harris is very opposed to that. He says consciousness is the one thing that can't be an illusion. Experience is real.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that it's not just another thing that it's almost like a hyper, like a chaotic, like an overactive sense detection, and we're just doing all this work. I have no idea, you know, the origins of consciousness.
Yeah. There's not much information. It's very mysterious.
I'm not under the impression that I'm gonna solve that problem.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, yeah.
I'm not gonna clarify that. But I think I always go back to suffering being the undeniable feature of whatever consciousness is. We know that things can suffer.
Yeah.
And that's no good.
No.
So let's not do that.
For sure.
let's not increase that experience.
For sure.
And any other experience, like we've been talking this whole time about meaning and purpose and becoming happy or more satisfied with life, and maybe even overdoing, and that's all well and good.
Yeah.
And I feel lucky to have the freedom and the time and the opportunity to even explore those things. And fortunately, we're not sitting here instead saying, did you know that I am suffering endlessly in this moment, right?
Yeah.
You and I are well enough now. And again, going back to your story, you were in a place where suffering was maybe the only thing that was around. And that, like, what a great way. Like the minute it sounds stressful to find purpose in your day where you have a job and you have relationships and opportunities, you could always go back and go, you know, this is not such a bad problem, because 6 months ago, I was in a place where I wasn't considering anything.
Yeah.
So if I ever need a reminder that consciousness is something, then I go back to that.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you ever watch Black Mirror?
No, I don't, but I've been recommended so many times to watch it.
I recommend
Definitely
it highly.
want
Yeah. There's an episode that, I don't think it'll be a spoiler, but part of this episode is that someone who was supposed of committing a crime is his consciousness is preserved after his death, and he's on display somewhere. And as a souvenir, people get his consciousness uploaded to a little Tamagotchi keychain of him being electrocuted and just scream and just suffering, right? So they're manufacturing consciousness after consciousness of that person suffering at the highest level, right? And it's twisted and everything, but those situations also worry me, where somebody is where that suffering is replicated where it doesn't need to be, as opposed to just endured.
Definitely.
We all suffer in some way, but I do worry about taking out any of our own suffering on other people is a form of that to me.
Sure.
I hurt people is where that phrase comes from.
Yep.
And taking out on children or animals or anything like that. So I always feel like at the end of the day, my inner stoned dorm room philosopher, undergrad wants to go, what is it? And it's really fun to think about. And yet I go, okay, well, if I never figure it out, I'll be okay with that, because all I know is that I suffer and that's bad. And let's get away from that.
Yeah. Well, man.
Yeah.
Hunter, I think this is a good place to wrap this up. I think that's an amazing.
It's been fantastic.
I think that's an amazing last thing to say. Try to reduce the suffering.
Yeah.
Try to have compassion to your fellow human beings. And I want to say again, thank you so much for coming.
Oh, my pleasure. You have
really appreciate
reduced my suffering greatly.
Same here, man. Same here. I really appreciate it. And I definitely love to have you back on. So
oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Appreciate it, man.
This is great, man.